Hi, this is Mark from ITCU Solutions, and today I just wanted to go over how to set up SD-WAN on a Fortinet firewall. I have a couple clients that have been having some issues doing this, and I think the biggest problem is that they already have an existing firewall, that they're trying to move their existing WAN 1 interface to an SD-WAN zone, and I think it's causing some problems. So the first thing I want to go over is that when you set up a SD-WAN setup and you try to move an interface to an SD-WAN zone, it can't be associated with anything else. It can't be referenced anywhere else, like in a policy, a firewall policy, or in a IPsec tunnel or anything like that. So the first thing I want to point out is I'm on my interface. If you look at my interface, my WAN 1, I have 5 references. So in order to get that into the SD-WAN zone, I have to remove those. And this is a very simple setup. All those references are in my policy. So I'm going to go over to my policy and I'm going to go to my firewall policy. So if you're on an older version of Fortinet, what you might have to do is literally go into each one of these. And you can see I have 4 rules here. If I click on my allow ping rule here and I click edit, what I could do to get rid of those references is just go to my outgoing interface here and change it to something. I'm not using DMZ, for example, right now, so I could go change it to DMZ. Or in theory, I could also change it even to my virtual WAN link here and click, because I'm not using it yet, and see if it'll let me do that. And I'll come down and click OK. I'm just testing this. Okay, I could do that right off the bat. I could go through and change all those. I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to change that back real quick. So I'm going to go back up here and click edit, and that would remove my references. Now I'm going to move it back to WAN 1 because we're going to do this a different way, and then click OK. But I could have went through every one of those and just went in and changed it to my virtual interface before I go. And if I didn't want to use that default zone, I could have went into my network and went into my SD-WAN and created a different zone name and did the same thing. But that's the very first thing you're going to have to do. You have to get rid of, however your interface is referenced anywhere on the firewall. So there's another way to do that, which is the way we're going to do it because we're using a newer version. We're in the 7+ version. So we're going to do this a different way. So the next thing we're going to do is go back to our network. And we're actually going to go to the SD-WAN setup. And you can see right off the bat, when you're on the SD-WAN screen, is you see something called virtual WAN link. That's the default zone. We could create our own SD-WAN zone name. It's like any other zone. It's just a group that aggregates things like interfaces. But we don't need to do that. We just need to create members. The easiest way to do this is to literally go under where it says create new. You could click on the virtual WAN link and do it there. But we're just going to create new and go to SD-WAN member instead of a zone. And what we're going to do is go up to none where the interface is. Okay. And we're going to select WAN 2. And I just wanted to show you that WAN 1 isn't there yet because it's referenced somewhere else in the rules on the firewall. So we'll select WAN 2 and click OK. Okay. Now I can't add WAN 1 yet because it's still referenced. So I'm going to go back to my interfaces. And we went over one way to do this if you had an older FortiOS. But since I have a newer one, I'm going to do it a little different. I'm going to actually go to my WAN 1 interface. And you'll see that there's a button up here called Integrate Interface. I could right click on it. Same thing would come up on the rule itself, or I mean on the interface itself. And what I'm going to do is just click Migrate to SD-WAN, which is effectively migrating to an SD-WAN zone. Click Next. Okay, and then we're going to change that target to the virtual WAN link, which is that default zone that Fortinet created for this, and click Next. And you'll see that what it's going to do is go through and it's going to swap out in each one of my firewall policy rules the WAN 1 with this new virtual WAN link. And it's going to try to do it for the static route. It's not going to be able to do that. It might also not be able to do it if you have stuff like IPsec tunnels or SSL VPNs or whatever you're doing. So we're going to click Apply and click OK and let it do its job. Okay. And then we're going to click Close. And you can see it worked everywhere but the static route. There was no change there, which was expected. Okay. Okay, so now my WAN 1, if I was to look at my policy and objects, just to show you, and go up to my firewall policy, you'll see now the only policies we have go from internal to virtual WAN link. WAN 1 is out of the picture, which means I can now go back to my network and go to my SD-WAN again. And what we're going to do now is go back to our Create New button and just select, actually, let's do it the other way. We'll click on our virtual WAN link, double and hit Edit. Okay, this is the other way you can do it. Oh, looks like they're already there. So we'll click OK. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. It added it because it would have happened when we converted it. So we're good with our interface being inside the zone. So the next thing we have to do then, since we've have both our physical interfaces in our zone, is we just have to take care of the static routing. And since I'm not using DHCP, I'm gonna have to go into my actual links themselves, and you'll see the gateway is pointing to 0000 because it's expecting DHCP to add that, which I don't have. So I'm gonna click on these guys and edit them. Click Edit. And I'm gonna put in what my actual gateway should be. And on this one, it should be 10.77.7.1. And I'm going to leave my priorities at 1. You don't have to do that. Like if you want the routing to actually route these differently, you can, maybe up the priority on WAN 1 or WAN 2, depending on which one you want to use more. But we're going to let the SD-WAN features handle this for us. So we're going to click OK. Okay, and we'll do the same thing with the other link. So we'll go to our WAN 2, because again, we're not using DHCP, and we'll change the gateway there to be 10.88.8.1. And again, we'll leave the priority the same. So in theory, this thing's going to equal cost load balance across those interfaces. So we're all set up. We have our gateways correct now. If we open this guy up, okay, so we're good to go there. And so the last thing we have to do just for a basic configuration is actually go into our static route, okay, and you'll see our static route is just pointing to WAN 1. We need that to point to our SD-WAN group. So we're going to click on that now, click Edit, and all we're going to do is just go eliminate the interface WAN 1 and add our new virtual WAN link in there and click OK. And then we're ready to go, because what that will do is that will point back to those interfaces we had with the SD-WAN. So we're going to go back to SD-WAN here. Okay, and I'm going to open up the plus. So now that static route is going to point to both of these. Okay, so I just want to test this basic setup to begin with. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go to my command prompt here, and I'm going to hit the up arrow and just hit enter. We're going to trace out to the internet. We're going to see which one of it. Okay, so 10.88.8.1 is my WAN 2. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Control C here real quick, because we don't need to see this whole thing. And I'm going to click back over here. I'm going to go pull my WAN 2 interface, because we're going to that right now, because we want to see if it fails over to WAN 1. I know if you look up at the sessions and everything, it looks like it's mostly using WAN 1 anyways, but just because the link. So I'm going to pause the video while I go pull that to show that this works. Okay, and you can see now I pulled WAN 2 and you can see WAN 1 is running. So I'm going to go back down here. I'm going to hit the up arrow, and now it should take a different path. As you can see that it is. So this basic setup works fine for failover as long as you're equal cost load balancing across those links. Now you might not want to do that because you have one decent circuit and one not so great circuit. So I'm just going to minimize this or hit Control C or I'll come back to it. The other thing I just wanted to point out is I'm going to go up here. I'm going to show you what my routing table looks like right now. And you can see I only have one route. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to go plug the link back in. And you'll see that, well, I'll come back with 2 routes. Okay, as you see, I just put in my command again. I just plugged in the WAN 2 interface, and you can see now I have both routes, and they're basically, you can see that they're equal cost load balancing, because if you look, the priority, there's no weighting or anything over here. So these guys are just going to equal cost load balance across both links. And if you have 2 links that are basically the same, and basically you just want them to act like a failover back and forth and load balance 50-50, this might be all you want to do. However, if you want to make this a little better, you might also want to use stuff like service level agreements, because let's say you have certain sites that you need to access, and that's better than, you need more than just general internet. Like let's say you're a bank and you have a data processor that you need to get to or something like that, or you have financial websites. So instead, you might want to set up something called a service level agreement. So what we're going to go is go back to our SD-WAN. We're going to just close out of this, and we're going to go back to SD-WAN over here. And what we're going to do is go to where it says performance SLAs. And you'll see that Fortinet already has several of these SLAs on here. They're actually not being used yet, because if they were, you would see something under packet loss, latency, and jitter already. They're pre-programmed, but they're not assigned to an interface, so they're not doing anything yet. But so we can control certain things, we're going to add our own just to test a couple things. So we're going to go to create new, and I'm just going to call this whatever test. Okay, and we're going to test an IP on our network here. So we're just going to click, because we're just going to ping it and put in 10.4.4.1, 11, sorry. Okay, and we're not going to worry about the interval and jitter and all that stuff, but we do want it applied to both interfaces, not just, if we hit specify, you might only have it applied to your WAN 1 or WAN 2 members. And again, you might want to utilize that if you have one interface that's much better than the other or something like that. So we'll click OK. Okay. And you can see right off the bat that because we selected an interface when we set up test, you see we have stats already shown up. So what I'm going to do is refresh the screen. Hopefully both those, yep. And you can see that they're both hitting it. So the SLA right now is not affecting the traffic over either interface. But let's say I want to see what happens if I lose connectivity to 10.4.4.11 on WAN 1, for example, or WAN 2, doesn't matter. So we'll go up to, I have another FortiGate here. And what I'm going to do is, let's see, let's do, I think that's WAN 1. So we'll go in to this guy right here, and we'll just change our accept. I already have a policy to block the traffic from the LAN to DMZ. So I'm going to change that to deny and click apply. And then hopefully when I go back over here, go on the other guy, I'm going to refresh again. Hopefully we'll see one of those SLAs change. Okay, and you can see now WAN 2 is down because it's only looking for test 10.4.4.11. And what that will do now is if we go back to our SD-WAN zones tab, you should see that basically all the traffic will start to flow over WAN 1, because WAN 2, it basically thinks it's down. So if I refresh this again, it'll treat it like it's down because of the way we have this coming on. So if I click over here, I'm going to test this with the trace. Hit the up arrow, enter here. You can see it's just going over WAN 1. And I'll click over here. And I'm going to refresh one more time. It should become less and less of the, yeah, you can see the green is becoming less and less as it goes. If I click plus over here, you'll see most of the traffic. And all the new traffic should end up on WAN 1 right now because of our SLA. Now, I'm going to go turn the rule back on the other guy here and change that back to accept. Okay, change it to accept and hit apply. Okay, I'm going to go back over. So now if I go back over to my performance SLA, okay, I can just refresh my page. Well, you already see it's already up. Now, I just want to go over one other thing. For example, if I wanted to go over, I wanted to use the Fortinet DNS that's already pre-programmed, what I would do is just click on this guy, click edit, and you'll see the reason it's not working. You'll see it's default DNS, active DNS, everything looks good, but what's missing? We don't have an SD-WAN member. So what I'm going to do is apply all of them by selecting all SD-WAN members, clicking OK. And immediately you should see it start to work. So if I refresh the page again, or yeah, I'll refresh the page again, see if it pops. And you'll see now that's all popping up there. So now both those checks are now going to be used to determine whether that interface is good. So if one of those things goes down, it's going to affect the traffic that goes over your interface. Now, in my case, most of my clients don't have symmetric internet connections or similar internet connections. One's usually much better than the other. So what I normally do is I'm going to go into my SD-WAN rules. Okay, so like if you have a case where, and I'm going to click on my SD-WAN, click edit, you'll see right off the bat, we're using source IP for it to determine. But when you do that, unless you have the priorities set on the interface themselves, it's basically going to try to do equal cost path load balancing. I don't want to do that. So generally with my clients, what I usually do is either set it up on something like volume or sessions, or possibly even spill over if they have a really bad connection, or if you have a connection that you're paying by, like say it's a cell connection and you want to keep down the you're paying basically if you go over a certain amount, like so many gigabytes a month. In that case, you might want to use spillover, but generally I'll use something like volume. And so I'm going to click on volume here. Okay. And when I do that, I generally wait, I'll wait WAN 1. So I'll go in here and change the weight from 1 to let's do 80. And I'll do WAN 2, I'll just do 20, just to make it so it equals 100, and click OK. And what you'll see when you do that, so what that should basically do is it should, per volume, so not per session, like if we were to do this per session, it would have been 80% of the sessions would have went on WAN 1, but in this case, it's basing it on bandwidth. And you can see this too if we go back to here and we look at the routing table, and we, well, at least I think we'll be able to see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Hold on a second. Let's close that real quick. So let me go back in here. Oops, let's go back into the SD-WAN, make sure we did this correct. Click edit. 2080, that looks good. Okay, I'm gonna click OK. Okay. I'm gonna go back to my static routes. I'm just gonna see something. Okay, so let's go back to SD-WAN. Okay, let's go look at our performance SLAs. And they're all up and good. Okay, so let's go back and look at our routing table. Normally, maybe it doesn't do it on the volume, but a lot of times you'll see the weight show up over to the right over here. If it's, you would think it would affect the routing, because this appears as though it's going to route 50-50, which makes me a little concerned here. But it is showing up as volume. Let's see what happens if we do it by session. I'm going to change that to 20, and we'll change to 80, and click OK. Okay, sessions, account last used. Okay, that's the only rule we have, so it should be working. So let's bring up our routing table again, just for kicks here. Okay, there you see it by session. You see where the weighting is showing up off to the right there in the actual routing, which is what I would expect to see. I'm not sure why it didn't show up under volume, but that's showing you that it should try to, do an 80-20 split, or out of every 100, send 80 out WAN 1, and that might be what you want to do, or probably most likely you want to do, because it's most likely you have a primary and secondary circuit, and your primary circuit is much better than your secondary circuit. But you'll still get the failover and everything that you normally want. I just wanted to go over kind of a basic setup for this, and hopefully this has been useful. This is kind of the basic thing. You can also use SD-WAN for stuff like doing VPN overlays and things like that over the top, which is probably is a little more advanced usage of this. But for most people, 90% of users, if you're just trying to set this up and you don't have like extra branches or something that you have VPNs connected to, or you're connected to a data center or something like that, for the vast majority of users out there, small businesses, this is probably all you need to do. And in fact, you don't even need to weight it or anything like that if you have like 2 cable connections or something. But I hope this has been helpful. And if anyone has any questions, please put them in the comments below. I hope you have a great day.